So when someone's
Oh, yeah.
going into the workplace, would you recommend them to like go in with the skill set and say where they're strong and where they're weak, like where they're going to fail?
I mean, maybe not in those words, but absolutely.
Here's
I'm
where I'm going to
actually,
fail bad.
you have the confidence of a triple Sagittarius. So you could say that and like people will be like, tell me more.
Ophira, welcome to the Earn Your Happy podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. And you just wrote a book. You've wrote many books, but you have a recent book out that I'm pretty excited about. And it is called The Astrology Advantage. And why I'm so excited about this one is because it really leans into also people who want to use it to grow their business, to grow their career, to use it in a way that helps them feel more successful in their careers as well. So I'm excited to have you on the show to talk about this because anybody who listens knows that I'm like a huge, Enneagram fan, or anytime we can learn about our strengths, it's really changed my life. And I think one of the biggest things that it's done for me, and I know that it's done for listeners, is it's made you feel a lot more empowered because we kind of can let it be okay that we suck at certain things and really lean into other things.
Totally. Absolutely.
Oh, well, I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you for coming on. And I would love for you to just share a little bit about your story. I know that we are both fellow Midwestern girls, Michigan girls, and you have built an incredible business based off of something that was not the norm, like especially, even 15, 20 years ago. And now you're all over the place with it, helping people like really understand themselves, write for magazines, all the fun stuff, the celebrity astrologist, which is so exciting as well. But would you tell me kind of like back up to the beginning? Let's go back to Michigan, you and your twin sister, and tell me kind of the beginning roots of like, how does somebody even start to dabble in astrology?
Yeah. I mean, it was totally by accident for me. I think being a twin all my life, people were always asking, like, what's the difference between you and your sister? How do I tell you apart? So I was always thinking about what made me unique and different and be like, well, no, she does that too. And, you know, but she does it a little bit differently. So I realized it was like how someone does something that makes them unique more so than what they do.
Mm,
Without realizing it, I was kind of a walking personality test my entire life.
interesting.
And I also grew up, I like to say, Middle Eastern in the Midwest, which is an interesting position to have at this time in the world, too. So, very much an inclusive, coexisting person just by virtue of growing up in Detroit. Eminem was on 8 Mile Road. I was on 9 Mile Road. So, just 1 mile outside of the city. And a very ethnically diverse neighborhood, too. So, my whole life was about like, just really being steeped in people who were from all different backgrounds, but also, and were who they were, but we were all in the same school and, on the same block, but doing us. And so I developed this appreciation for a world where you had to kind of live in different realities. And I went to the University of Michigan, and while there, I stumbled upon astrology. My college boyfriend did my chart for me as a gift. And I didn't realize until I got this 30-page document that explained all these different parts of me that didn't really fit together neatly, that was okay. I didn't realize I had lived my whole life trying to make sense of myself. And then all of a sudden I realized I didn't have to make sense, at least not in the way that I thought. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that who are listening. Like, we think, oh, I'm this. No, actually I'm this. No, I'm this. Like, what if you're all of those things? What if those contradictory, complex parts of you all were part of the whole kind of symphony of who you were? So I got such relief out of that at age 21. I wanted to share it with all my friends. So I dove down the rabbit hole of learning astrology while studying art, while working in publishing. We'll get into all of that. But suffice to say, it just became this shortcut and this tool that made it was so shocking. It wasn't even on my radar. And would have, if someone had told me, oh, just the stars make you who you are, I'd be like, yeah, sure. You know, okay, yeah, you want to sell me an elevator pass too. But the way I came upon it and the information in this document was undeniable. You probably felt like that when you read about your Enneagram, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is like what was that moment for you when you were going through that you were like, "Oh, I'm accepting this as truth." Was it because it was so undeniable?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm a Sagittarius, like you. That's
Same.
my sun sign. I didn't know there was anything more than just your sign, and I didn't even really know what that was. But I had started to like read little things about it. It's like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm positive, optimistic, entrepreneurial. I love to travel, all those things. But this chart told me that I had a moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars in
Mm.
Scorpio, which is very much about learning about the mysteries of things. And then my rising sign, which is the outer me, was in Capricorn, which is very businessy. And that the Scorpio parts of me were very introverted and I love to code computers and do all these nerdy kind of
Wow.
internal things, yeah, that like
Mhm.
never were in the Sagittarius
I was
description.
going to say if you told me that, like and I knew that about you, I'd be like, "Really? Are you sure?"
Yeah, yeah, I was
Okay.
obsessed with puzzles. I do these 5,000 piece puzzles as a kid,
Mm.
crossword puzzles, learned to code. Yeah, so it explained things that it was like this is too eerily accurate for it to be a
Mm.
coincidence. Because I was a nerd and I was working in IT at University of Michigan to pay the bills, I found a little piece of software. This was in the 90s where I could do people's charts for free, and I started testing it out on my friends. I was like, is this really? Because I'm a skeptic, I'm
Yeah.
scientific. I'm like, let's see if that wasn't just a weird fluke. But time and again, it would be like, whoa, is someone spying on me? So I had to give it up and be like, whether I have proof of this for whatever, probably someone who, insists that everything has to be scientifically proven. I can't deny that there's something to this.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, it's when I first started kind of getting into astrology and just reading about my sign because it felt that way. I was like, "Wait, this is starting to feel very accurate." But I was just dabbling in like horoscopes, and a lot of the horoscopes didn't feel like they fit because I, I'm reading the same horoscope that you're reading. You're scientific. I am not. Like, I don't want to do the puzzles. I don't want to do
You
any of
got a
that.
lot of
I'm like,
Sag.
no,
You've got a lot of
right.
Sag, Sun,
There's a
Moon, and
lot.
Mercury. You want the big ideas.
Yes,
So,
totally.
mhm.
So for me, I was like, I really like, I felt really drawn to it, but I'm like, but I so don't resonate with a lot of it. But the ones that I do, I like really resonate with. So that's why, with what you have, what your book is about, what everything that we're going to talk about today, I love how accurate it gets. And exactly like what you said when you were describing yourself, like these different versions of you that it's like in business, really being able to understand yourself and lean into those and know how you operate best. Because I think
Yeah,
when we understand these different archetypes that you chat about and really understand ourselves, we're leaking a lot less energy. Like we're not trying to have
totally.
to be so many different things.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Michigan girl starting to dabble in astrology with your friends
Yep.
and you're starting to just see how incredibly clear this is. Are you like, man, I'm loving this. How could I make this a career? Or are you still in dabble phase?
Nope, I was in dabble phase.
Okay.
I had a magazine actually that my sister and I started in college called Hues, Hues. And it was meant to make women's magazines inclusive, cue
Mhm.
my upbringing in Michigan. So like, let's have more representation in magazines. I
Mhm.
guess I was a little ahead of my time because it
Yeah,
was the early
for sure.
90s. But we decided to try to make it a national magazine after college, which we did, and we sold it when we were 26 to a larger publishing company.
Wow. You go, guys.
Yeah, it was
You were
very
way ahead of your
ambitious,
time.
very ambitious. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would just talk about astrology. Hughes was a student publication at first. So we would have meetings with our collective of writers and designers of all different backgrounds. And we'd be talking about these kind of heavy identity issues, which we covered in the magazine. And then when we were done with that, talk would turn to astrology, and suddenly the mood would lift. All those tensions of our differences in race or gender or whatever would kind of go away, and we would just come. It didn't matter if they were a Gemini and someone else was a Scorpio. Like, it was just, we were all speaking this common language.
Mm,
I was just amazed by watching it from like a sociological experiment. I was just like,
mm,
wow, this is the only thing I've ever seen where people can talk openly about their differences and not feel polarized and divided and alienated. And you can imagine that was way before what we're dealing with now in the world.
mhm,
So it just was like, I was just amazed to see how astrology brought people together. And that's just one of my core values and joys in life, is to see people not being stopped by their perceived differences and connecting and collaborating and supporting each other, because I really do think we are greater than the sum of our parts
mm,
and we need each other. So I'm like,
mhm.
if it's astrology that brings the people together, then oh, let's just ride the horse that brought us and go with it. And I just followed
Totally.
it that way. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yep.
love this because I remember you're bringing me back to a time where we were sitting with my family on my husband's side, and we get along, but we also can like have some very tense times, but we're open to communication all the time, and we get through it, but we absolutely can bicker and fight through those times. But we were at my
Sure.
in-laws house, and I just remember I was kind of struggling with some of the like relationships on that side is essentially just trying to understand how people operate. Like, we work with my brother-in-law who's awesome, but he's a Virgo. I didn't under and Virgo and Sag
Yes.
working style is like very,
Hmm.
I'm like this idea and I want to do this, and he's like, no, here's why we shouldn't. Like, we're always opposing. And then his mom is like that too, just very detailed, needs to like really dig in. And I think what was happening is like you can kind of like butt heads frequently when you don't understand where someone is coming from or why they're operating. And so
You got
one
it.
night we were sitting around, we all did like read just, I went on some website, but we were like, let's try to learn about each other. And I remember that was one of the first moments where we all were like in this aha of each other with way more understanding, and just like, now I know when you do this or you act like this or say this, even that that's for you needing more information or because this is how you have to be. And so I love
Exactly.
exactly what you said. Like, it just is such a uniter of people. So
Mhm.
for so many reasons. So you guys get really, really in depth in it, not only in your book, but on your website. You have some really cool stuff we're going to chat about because you have an IM system that you had put me through and sent to me, like my
Yeah.
chart. And it's like easy. I got to go through it quickly, but also it's very in depth. While it's still like you can read it. It's not 47 pages and I'm over it because I'm Sagittarius. So,
Yes. Exactly.
but with that, let's dive into some of the archetypes that you guys chat about.
Absolutely. So, with our new book, The Astrology Advantage, we got to bring a tool out, a shortcut from astrology that isn't talked about that much. And it's called the dominance in the chart.
Mm,
Basically, when you do a birth chart, as I was explaining before, you're more than just your zodiac sign or your sun
mm,
sign. You've got the planets, you've got the rising sign, the moon, and then 2 points that a lot of astrologers use called the north and south nodes that are also known as the destiny points. So
mm,
there's 13 factors that would be in most astrology charts. So it's too much. It's too much for people. So that was the shame to me always about astrology. I was like,
yeah.
God, I mean, all you need is your time, date, and place of birth. You don't have to take some 70 question quiz, which I did do to find out that I was an Enneagram 3 shocker. But overachiever much, but
Yeah.
still, I was like, I'll be an overachiever, but the rest of the world, maybe not so much. So, how can I make this easy? So,
Mm,
we decided to work with the dominance in the charts. So, what you can do is look at all 13 points and count up how many are in fire, earth, air, or water
mm,
signs. And then the zodiac is also divided into three what are called qualities. Those are based on the seasons. They're called
Mm,
cardinal signs, fixed signs, and mutable signs. Too much astro jargon. So we renamed them innovator, authority, and
mm,
maven to capture their flavor. So these are really the psychological drivers, the triggers. Like I said earlier, how we do things, not just what we do, makes
mm,
all the difference. So if your chart, if those 13 planets and placements are mostly in Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, those are the cardinal signs that start every season, then you're an innovator, meaning because you have an energy of seasons starting, you are a pioneer, a trailblazer, a visionary. We should
mm.
tell people you can go now to astrostyle.com/quiz and put in your time, date, and place of birth, find out which one you are right away or the composition of them. So,
You guys
um,
can pause and literally do that right now so you can
do
enjoy
that.
the rest of your conversation. Yes.
Yes, exactly. You'll have three numbers. I'm an innovator. I'm 643, which means, and you're an innovator too, Lori. So six of my planets are in these trailblazing starter signs. As you can see, I started a magazine. I did all these kind of ahead of my time things. And I wish I knew that at the time because I didn't. I didn't know that about myself. And I thought, again, I would always think there was something wrong with me rather than, oh, that's the way I do things. And then
Mm,
I'm four of the authority. So the authority signs are the ones in the middle of every season. They're the sustainers, the builders, the producers. So if you're an authority or high on authority planets, like five or more, then you are someone who really likes responsibility. The
mm,
innovator will kick it off and then they'll give it to the authority who will build it into something or project manage it to make sure that it gets, planned and produced, make sure that the seed the innovator planted actually gets to grow roots and,
mm,
and bloom. So,
mm,
and then the mavens are the ones at the end of every season. That's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So they're kind of the transition team. They're the ones who then I call them the marketing team actually,
mm,
because an innovator can start something, an authority can build it, but everybody has to find out about it too for it to really take flight. So the mavens are the messengers. They're the ones who go and buzz about everything. Oh my God, you got to take this quiz. You got to read this book. You got to listen to this podcast, this TED talk. They gather people. They bring community together. So you have an interesting spread because you're almost even. Sometimes people can be even on two of them, but you're an innovator, but you're 544. So you probably,
mm.
I mean, you dabble in well in all of them, which is probably why you know, I mean, I think podcasting is great because you get to, share your cutting edge ideas, but also talk to people, but do something innovative, bring the expertise of the authority world in. And you were dominant in fire and air. So you're a fire air innovator. There's actually 84 possible combinations of the I am and the elements. So you're a fire air innovator, the maverick, an independent and unconventional rule breaker who blazes new trails and lives on their own terms. That
Mm.
does sound like you.
Yes. It's, this is so interesting. I've heard, quite a bit of different versions of these, but I've never, this feels, I will say, like the most fitting because you know how you said, like, oh, I've always been like, oh, I feel bad for this or that. Like, something with my Virgo, heavy Virgo team is that
Yeah.
I always want to include everything from the authority and the maven while I'm the innovator. And it's like, can you just focus? And I'm like, but they're so important.
Oh,
So,
innovators do not focus well. That's why we have authorities and sometimes mavens. Mavens can also distract us as much as they can focus us, but they'll organize us too. Your
yeah.
job is really to come with the big ideas. And I had a joke that innovators should have a bumper sticker that says, "I'm not procrastinating, I'm downloading," because they, as an innovator, the idea starts to come to you and it's already out of your mouth before it's fully formed in your head. So I'm sure those meetings with your team are equally exciting and frustrating for them because they're like, how's she going to pivot out of left field today, or what new idea is she going to bring? But then it's also like, ooh, how exciting. We're pivoting onto this. Like, innovators don't waste time if something isn't working. We're like, all right, moving on. I got 10 more ideas where that came from.
Oh my gosh, I always joke for anybody who understands this. I feel like I do feel like I attract a lot of my personality type on here. So it's like I am such a
Good.
fast start. But then if I don't have an integrator or like what would that
Yeah.
be, like an authority
An
or,
authority. I have an
yeah,
authority. I have two authority integrators on my team, and
yeah,
they're in the inbox. They're doing the customer service. I do
totally.
to tinker with stuff and do stuff myself, but they make sure like, oh, hey, you forgot to finish this piece of it when you
Yeah.
got distracted.
I mean, this is so me. And it's I'm such a fast start, but if I don't have those innovators, a fast quit. Like
Yep.
I need that integrator and that person who's going to ground that idea. Okay. So let's kind of talk about some ways to support yourself around when you're an innovator as a lead, an authority as a lead, and a maven as a lead. So let's kind of start with that innovator.
Yeah.
Like you said, what are ways in our life, in our business, like what are the upsides and then what are the downsides and how we can support ourselves as an innovator?
Yeah, I love that question. So, innovators forget to eat, forget to take breaks, forget to be in our bodies because
Mm,
we get caught up, swept away by the muse, by a big idea. We really can do 10 times more than most people because time is very elastic for innovators. Like,
mm,
so how are you going to do that? How are you going to skip? Don't worry, I've got it. I can do 10 hours in one if I need to. The problem for innovators is when they like, okay, say your company grows to a certain point and you start to staff up, or you sell your company to a larger business. And then all of a sudden you have to start to follow rules and timelines and
mm.
make sure that you don't do that to yourself, because there's
Yeah,
nothing, it'll kill the innovator spirit. But do set up systems so that your integrator can make sure the rest of the team is running. And innovators also need to spread out a lot. They don't like to sit in one place. We have a chapter in the Astrology Advantage about the ideal workspace layout for every IAM. And
oh,
for
that's so good.
yeah, innovators, we call you the satellite. So you have one desk that you never sit at, that you feel guilty about because you spent a lot of money on it, probably. And
Yeah.
then you spread out everywhere else. You take over the dining room table, you have your cafe, you have your Soho house, you have all your
Yes.
places that you go. And you have to,
I
like
have multiple places and I'm like, what's today?
right.
Yes.
Right. You're like a vagabond when it comes to your but that's what keeps you productive. You need that
Mm,
variety, that discovery, that kind of like to
mhm,
be around other people. You should not ever be around people who are doubting you. If you need feedback and you want to kind of like, market test your ideas as an innovator, just wait till you're at a certain point. They have to,
mm.
it's good to not just launch something innovator style, but also don't let someone kill the dream too early. So
Totally. Okay. I
yeah.
feel that. Mm,
Yeah. And then the authorities are very much like, I say we live in a type A world for the authorities because they are the kind of linear certainty seeking. They can be very creative, but they still like a plan. They want to know, like they actually like get off on the process of
mm,
planning and their project management. They have a ritual. They love a ritual. They get themselves the new notebook, the new pen, and they set up their workspace. I actually did a session with Amy Porterfield, who's an authority, and
yeah.
she was looking at the workspace for the authority is what I call the fortress. They need to separate work and play. They have their station, their command center, and very bare bones desk, and then they leave their office area to eat, to do that. Whereas the innovator and the maven are like having the al desco meals all the time. But the
Mhm.
authority is very like there's a separation of everything. So
Mm.
yeah, Amy was laughing. She's like, I'm sitting at this bare desk and I have nothing in my office except for a framed copy of my New York Times bestseller. So but they're really big on their achievements. And while innovators love the future, authorities love the past because
Mm,
not because they're stuck in the past, so they can get that way, but they love like I did this and then I did this. I got my bachelor's, then I got my master's, then I got my PhD. I did my 200 hours of yoga teacher training. I did this certification. So they really value knowledge, kind of building upon more knowledge and
mm,
all their credentials. So as leaders, they're very trustworthy and people really look to them as authorities. So no cutting corners, no fudging things unless you want to lose your entire credibility. But they can also be a little stagnant. They can have loss aversion. They can get
mm,
stuck and not evolve. So we all need each other in the IM
mm,
system to get out of our own
mhm,
way. And then the mavens, lastly, they're the fun ones. They're the eternally youthful, communicative, collaborative. They can get very in their heads, especially if they have a lot of Gemini or Virgo for their maven planets. Now, what's funny is that you and I are Sagittarius, but
mhm,
we're both lowest on Maven. Sagittarius is a Maven sign, but we're innovators. So you may find this if you're listening that you do the quiz and you're dominant in one of the IMs that's nothing like your zodiac sign. And that's what I
mm,
love about this system. It's like it really captures the essence of you. So the Maven way of doing things is very like they're sometimes unappreciated as leaders because they prioritize fun and community rather than just getting things done. And they're usually right, but they get yelled at until it's the final stretch and they've created this perfect event and everyone's like, oh, you really brought it home. But they can be like the misbehaving children in class sometimes. We joke about the maven mess because they can make piles. They're always doing a million different things at once. They don't like to choose. They're multi hyphenates. So they really need to have different stations, almost like a prep cook or a science lab where you lay out your various things. But, you
mm.
know, if you are married to a maven or live with a maven, you may have risked a broken bone with one by almost tripping over their Amazon Prime boxes and piles.
That would be tough for me. That would be tough for
It
me.
would be. It would
I'm
be.
not a piles person.
No.
Something's
Nope.
telling me maybe my husband might have some of that, some
You
of
might
that
be a
in him.
maven. A lot of innovators end up marrying mavens because they listen to our ideas and are
Mm.
fascinated by what we have to say. But then they drive us crazy because they always need to be interacting. And we're like, I need some space. I need to just be left alone now with
Yeah.
my ideas.
Uh-huh. Okay, so how can we maybe we go back through again and just say, what have you found? You're an innovator and we can go through each sign, but what have you found has been like one of the biggest ways to support yourself as an innovator? Do you like make people take this test and you're like, okay, I need to make sure I have this person around me? Like, what are the things that you've done in your career? Maybe share a time where you didn't feel supported prior to this knowledge. And then
Oh, yeah.
after, what did you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have this knowledge when I moved to New York City. So
Mm.
I've never worked full time for anyone for more than 9 months of my life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the time it would take to have a baby. But a couple of those 9 month stints, I wish I had understood being an innovator. Now, one of them was at a .com in 2099. I got to be full innovator, free range because there was no structure. I
Mm,
thrived. But the first job that I took to get to New York City was at a magazine. It was at Ms. Magazine. And
mm,
it was, yeah, which was great. Gloria Steinem
yep.
personally had me come and she wanted a young, at the time, person to come and bring the next generation voice in, which was perfect for an innovator. But
Yeah.
I got there and the office was very traditional publishing, no frills, the gray cubicle kind of furniture, Office Max furniture. There was, you had to be in at a certain time and like it was frowned
Soul
upon
crushing.
if you left your, yeah, it was soul crushing for me as an innovator. I mean,
Yes.
I used to sneak off to the little freelancers room, and that's how I got my first astrology column because I did a
Mm.
reading. I would do little informal readings for the one of the freelancers who ended up at Teen People magazine and gave me an astrology column, which
Oh
led
my
to
gosh.
my whole career.
That's
Um,
amazing. Just I want to note right there, like by you sticking to being you, even though there were rules, I'm sure, against that
yeah.
potentially,
Yep.
you landed where you were supposed to be, which is
Yep.
great. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Continue.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it was exactly
Mhm.
that. It was by in, but I would want to like, I'd wake up in the morning. I lived in Brooklyn and the office was in Manhattan. So I'd have to, shower, get dressed, take a train. But as an innovator, like I am in my creative zone when I have my first cup of coffee. Don't stop anything. I just like the ideas start flowing. You can probably relate to this. So
Mhm.
it would just drive me crazy that I'd be like, "Oh, I just got into a groove." And it was it was an idea for the magazine, but it was like, and now I have to stop and shower and take the train. By the time I walk into the office, I'm going to have lost all my inspiration and be tired and cranky.
Totally.
This was 1998, 99. So there was no remote work at the time. Yeah. So it was just a shame. And I'd want to like get up and go to the bookstore and get some innovators need outside stimulation and download and inspiration to feed our ideas. But it was like, no, you go on your lunch break and you tell everyone when you're coming. It was like being a child, actually. It was
Mhm.
insulting to me. Like, but that's how we work, like clock out for lunch. I know it was also being responsible to my coworkers, but I just don't do well. So now in my own company, we have no full time employees. We have full on employees. So
Mm.
that means you ask for the support you need, you get it. We do know what your IM type is, so we can anticipate so that I can make
Mhm.
sure that I'm not cheating you out of the structure that you need or whatever it is. But you can work whenever you want, and I'm not going to micromanage you. Just everything has to get done to the expectations when we agree that it's due. And other than that, your process is yours.
Mhm. That is so insanely powerful because, like you said, some people are full on in the morning. Some people, I have one
Yeah.
incredible employee. I get emails, way late at night, but I don't care what she does during the day. She loves her creative time at night. Like,
Yeah.
and when you make people just have these different structures, it is so blocking. Like for someone like yourself, I'm just thinking, look at how much different companies may have missed out on someone so innovative and creative like you. Like you guys really set a huge, you blazed a trail in astrology, like all throughout the last, what, 20 plus years. And so
Thank you.
people missed out on that by making you work in certain boxes, and they pushed
They
you away to
did.
find a box that you could work in, a non-box, box with no walls. Okay, so let's talk about authority and how you can support authority now.
Yeah. Yeah. Support and authority with the exact opposite. Like they need to know what's expected of them. My authority integrator, James, I know if I want to get the best out of him, I need to give him a list of exactly what I want. And I don't expect him to read my mind. He does. And so what we do is we use Marco Polo or Voxer and leave each other so I can asynchronously leave him messages as long as he knows, like I'm not using a million different ones. We have our go-to platforms that we use. And I know that like if I have an idea at 2 a.m. or something, I will leave it on there. And we have our ways of confirming. There's some seasons, usually like when it's cold outside and I'm more sedentary, where we'll meet during at a certain time every day. But
Mhm.
it's gotten harder and harder as I've grown. So I'm always having to make sure for the authority people on my team that I'm giving them enough advance. Sometimes it's like, let's check in at the end of the day and make your agenda for tomorrow.
Mhm.
So we use Loom and do screen recordings. Authorities need confirmation. They will not proceed to the next step until whoever is doing the sign off on what their accountabilities are says green light. They will stop at the yellow light,
Mhm.
They'll even stop at a green that's about to turn yellow. So, and
Okay,
it
this
might
is
look,
making a
yeah,
lot of. It's so
yeah,
funny as you're talking. I can literally be like, "Okay, everybody who I work with needs to take this test, because where it could go wrong is certain people could be like, well, why don't they're not a go-getter. They're not completing this the way that I want, even though you love the work. Maybe you're
Yes.
just not loving that you might need someone on your team who takes more authority, I
More
guess.
authority and more initiative. So they
More
actually,
initiative. Yes.
they need to be empowered with the authority to take the initiative. That's the
Uh,
caveat. When they know what their turf is, they will do it, but only when it's like, hey, you are in charge of this now.
mm,
And then they do awesome. But like I was coaching someone who is running a sales team, and she's like, I've got this go-getter 25-year-old authority, and I just need her to like start doing outreach. I'm like, she's probably not going to. You may have to get the leads for her. And then, but she'll send them all the materials. She'll project manage the deal. She'll do all of that. So it's also about putting people in the right roles. Like over time, an authority, if they gather up enough of a network, can do sales and outreach and that kind of thing. Or if they really feel confident in what they're selling. But it's tougher for them to do that. So
okay, that is so good to know, because that can just, as somebody who leads companies or leads businesses, people who are listening, runs a team, you can spend a whole lot of time running in circles and draining a lot of energy again to want someone to be something else, that they're
absolutely.
just never going to be. So the quicker you can move them into that role or wherever
Yeah.
they need to go is so huge for you as a leader as well. Okay,
Yeah.
Maven, how are they best supported?
They need to know that like they don't have to choose only one thing because that
Mhm.
will drive them crazy. They need at least a couple things that they're working on at once. And definitely not to be micromanaged. Our managing editor is a Maven, and she has full, full freedom to go and like set up a blog post and get the art, and like they love the social aspects of the job. So make sure they're in something where they can work with a team and have some of that camaraderie. It's not good for a Maven to be isolated too much, and value their ideas too. So, their suggestions. They are always up on the trends and pop culture or the books. Even if they're not up on pop culture, whatever their area of expertise is, they're going to be in the know. They're big readers, YouTube listeners, like so.
Mm,
Yeah, so they're kind of the eyes and ears of everything. They can be gossipy. You have to be careful. They can get distracted and social sometimes. They have great like flair for marketing. They know what's good and what the kids are watching and
mm,
listening to. So they will keep your company from getting stagnant and out of
mm.
touch. And that's more important than ever now.
That's huge. So,
Mhm.
do you have a story where you feel like integrating this has been super transformational, either for a group of people or at a
Yeah.
workplace, or tell me something?
Yeah. I recently went away with a 6-person executive team,
Mm.
and they realized they had no authorities on their team. A couple of
Oh,
them were hybrids, but they were mostly innovator and maven. And there was
so were
one,
things not getting done, or what was the result of having no authority
the
as well?
result was that they were a little siloed. They didn't have
Okay.
any real internal processes. So, yeah, so everybody was kind of running their own department, but they weren't cohesively brought together. And
Interesting.
yeah, so that was great when they were in startup mode, but now they've gotten funding and they're growing. And so they were struggling with scaling, and they have, the aspiration to add a zero to their revenue by the end of the year, of the end of 2025. So in order to do that, they're going to have to put more, company wide processes in place, or
Mm,
do a little more formal kind of things. Like the CEO is like, well, I'm not going to hold anyone's hand, and so what came up was like maybe to create a training program for
mm,
everybody. Like they had hired a lot of like young Gen Z scrappy kind of people who they felt were like, this is, I just read a statistic that 75% of some companies that were surveyed had fired a recently hired college grad this year
Mm.
because we have 5 generations of people in the workplace right now. So we really do need some common language. And apparently 95% of Americans read their horoscope and 70% believe it. So I'm like, this is actually a pretty good tool maybe to unite us. But they,
Wow.
yeah, they were like, oh, what do I do? Because she has so much potential. But what had happened is I think they acquired another company and put new senior managers above these kind of younger people who had been free range during the startup era. So, and they weren't adapting well. So they needed to add the authority flavor, just like the young people, they didn't know what was expected of them. And I don't even know if it was because they were young, but or because it was like the culture of the organization was innovator maven heavy. And now it needed authority structure. But they had people who were like, I'm going to wear whatever I want. I'm going to chat with the people who come into the business and that kind of thing. So it wasn't like they didn't have dress codes. They didn't have any codes. It was just like, we're all making this thing go. So how to not lose the spirit of honoring individuality, but still create that framework. So that's what we started working on and we'll probably continue to work on ongoingly, preserving the spirit of the business. And we actually did a chart for the business itself too,
Mm.
which I think it was a Maven business also. So you can take the day that you incorporated and do a
Mm.
full birth chart and find out the I am for that and make sure that that is reflected in your organizational culture.
That is so interesting. Are you finding yourself, you personally loving, are you gravitating more towards helping businesses with this right now?
Yeah, we've been kind of quietly doing that for I started as an affiliate for Marie Forleo's B School a decade
Mhm.
ago, maybe more. And then we developed our own program. We called it the Cosmic Success Incubator, Astropreneurs. It became named after a while, but we'd have like 100, 120 people for a year working on their businesses and brands, the entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs, as we call them, the wannabe entrepreneurs. And just saw amazing results. So I'm really loving now taking teams. We have 3 workshops, one on personal branding with astrology, one on team dynamics, and one on just understanding your blueprint. And I've been going to, like, we spoke at the Fast Company Innovation Festival. I have some big financial and other companies bringing me in to do like hour-long workshops for their team, like in the guise of fun, but everybody's like, ooh, we should really start using this. So I'm developing it into more of a program, like a Myers-Briggs Enneagram kind of thing.
Yeah, this is so helpful because what we can tend to do, well, I'm saying we in blanket statementing right now, because what my particular personality used to do when I very first became an entrepreneur, I was terrible at like hiring and creating teams. I was just like, let's go. Here's the vision. I'm going to keep telling you the vision, but putting together a team was like, it was a shit show on fire. It was not great. I would hire people who I was like attracted to, like personality wise. It was like, oh,
Oh
you're
God,
fun and
yes.
you're X, Y, and Z, and you're going to be great to work with.
Totally.
So it was a bunch of people who all wanted to be kind of either doing what I was doing or just we couldn't like, wouldn't integrate, couldn't stay linear, couldn't get the job done. And that
Right.
was a really hard thing to learn because it can, you put that in the workplace and it can really break up relationships quickly as well. And you can feel like a terrible leader because you're like, I'm hiring people based on
True.
what maybe what they're telling me or what they want to be. Because I also think when you're hiring people, they can have high aspirations of wanting to be something they're not. So when someone's
Oh yeah.
going into the workplace, do you like recommend them? Like if they're not necessarily wanting to be an entrepreneur, but maybe they're working for a company right now, would you recommend them to like go in with this skill set and say where they're strong and where they're weak, like where they're going to fail?
I mean, maybe not in those words, but absolutely.
Yeah. Here's
I'm
where I'm going to
actually,
fail bad.
yeah. I
Although
mean,
I
I think
might
you have
hire
the
someone like that.
confidence
I
of
don't
a
know.
you have the confidence of a triple Sagittarius. So you could say that and like people would be like, tell me more.
Yeah,
But
I didn't think that was wrong. I'm like, here's what I'm going to fail. Like, here's where we're going to win.
I would be like, if you want to get the best out of me, here's how I thrive. I was actually just
Mm,
coaching a 31-year-old relative on this who's moving
mm,
into like a tech startup for the first time and so helping her with her
mm,
onboarding and hiring process and like what to say. She's an innovator too. So it's actually been really fun to use it for I don't like those generational divides. I know that when I was 20, I was as much of an entitled jerk as everybody else is when they're 20. I thought I knew everything and I didn't and I needed that guidance and we all do. And I think when you're going into a situation, yeah, just say, look, this is what I'm really strong in. And yes, I may ask for support around this, or you may see me doing a little bit of I think if as long as you go in like I'm so self-aware that I have coping tools that I'm coming with because my overall intention is to be so amazing that I contribute something awesome to your company and help take it to the next level. If
mm.
the person who hires you knows that that's why you're talking about that versus like being an entitled snowflake or whatever they call people, then they're going to be like, great, awesome.
I love that. What's been one of the most like surprising things with maybe because you've been in this for a long time, but with this book this time around, like what's been one of the big things that's come out of this particular piece of creativity that you've done, like this book?
Just how many people in the professional and business world, like, I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be, I love a challenge as an innovator. So, like, let's just bring this into the business world. And while there are people who like to consider themselves dyed in the wool skeptics, they're really cynics, not
Mm,
skeptics. 99% of the people are like, as soon as it makes sense to them, are like, this is awesome. Why haven't I heard about this before? Why haven't I been using this? And to me, I'm looking at it as a creative challenge and opportunity to go, yes, I understand the conceptions about astrology that are out there, and you're missing out on the best kept
mm.
secret. This is a shortcut. Why wouldn't you use it? And just, it's a tool. It's not a rule. It's not a belief system. It's like the Enneagram is rooted in spirituality. Each of the 9 types is associated with one of the planets. It's no less woo woo than astrology is, but nobody knows that. We forgot about that. The Myers Briggs methodology was created by a mother and a daughter from Michigan, from Lansing, Michigan. Did you know
Look at
this?
us. No, look at us go.
Not to recommend someone else's book on this, but there's a book. It's, oh God, what it's called, The Personality Brokers.
Mm.
It was a mother who homeschooled her daughter. She became obsessed with Carl Jung, so much so that she first started writing erotic fiction about him and then developed Myers-Briggs based on his work after like exchanging letters with him and maybe even showing him her smut stories there. So,
That is fascinating.
personality
Fascinating.
tests or
Okay.
your corporate personality test is, someone's kink from the 19th century. Okay. So
Look at that. So there you go. We can just wipe all that away, all the
just
thoughts around.
saying. Yeah.
Okay, so I love that you brought that up because I feel like I always have like one or two people who are, because I came from a very religious background, was homeschooled through high school, like a lot of like the just
Yeah.
very isolated upbringing. And I think initially when I first started dabbling in spirituality a lot of years ago now, it felt like, is this okay? Is this what is this? Is this
Yeah.
like a belief system? Is this like a cult? What is this? And then
Totally.
I think I just learned so much around like, no, these are actual like how would you explain that? Like how do you explain that to people who maybe have that
Yeah.
thought in the back of their
Well,
head?
I love that. And, my mother is a rabbi. I grew up with
Mm,
Judaism very strongly in our home. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. So religion was a part of my life too.
yeah.
And I grew up around a lot of very Christian and Muslim people in Detroit. So, Detroit, Michigan is a very religious Midwestern area. And I always say, I'm wearing a ring with Orion's belt, the three stars. These are the same stars that the Magi followed to
Mm,
Jesus' manger in the Bible. So we have been following the stars to survive for all of civilization.
mm,
So I have a lot of Christian, even born again Christian people that I counsel with astrology, and it's really your intention. Like this is just mapping the stars and going, okay, it's like math. It's like what's happening overhead. Like it's not anti-religion to find out what the chemical compound of water is. It's got hydrogen, it's got oxygen. Okay, well, there's Pluto and it's forming a 90-degree angle to where you are on Earth. It's just, and this is what it could mean. So it's
mm,
just a system and it has nothing to do with that. But of course, it's what you do with it. There are people who will use a lot of things
mhm.
for perverse, but they'll use, daycare centers to do harm to people. They'll use, all kinds of sacred institutions, even religious institutions have been corrupted by people abusing their power there and in clergy roles. So I think of course humans do a lot of messed up stuff to each other, and
Mhm.
then there are good humans who take the position of trust that others give them very seriously and bring integrity to it. So
Mhm.
yeah. But that said, astrology is not a licensed, regulated practice either. So you want to make sure you know who you're talking to.
Totally.
Get
I
a
love that.
reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like a therapist. Yeah.
A therapist, a business coach, a podcast host, like
Absolutely.
do your own work. Don't take everything that they
Hmm.
say as final at all. I love that. Yes, you have to, in biblical terms, eat the fruit and spit out the seeds. We'll bring it right there.
Yes,
Figure it out.
exactly.
Well,
I
I've
love
loved
that.
this conversation so much. Thank you so much. I loved learning about myself. I love learning about the different archetypes. I think this is so helpful for people. If we want to continue on and go a little deeper into this, I know that we have your book, so I've hooked it up into the show notes as well.
Awesome.
So wherever books are sold, we can also go and grab
Absolutely.
your book.
You can. It's on Audible, it's on Kindle, and you can go to astrostyle.com/IAM. And we have a whole little micro site there where you can learn more. You can do the quiz and get additional resources. But the book is the deep dive and
Mm.
into every part of your life. And
Okay, love this. Yeah, like the quiz just kind of perked me up to want to learn more. So it's
yes,
a
we'll
good
make sure
route.
you get a book if you haven't gotten one, and
Yes,
you
for sure.
can read all about your team, your partner, your like family members. It's so comprehensive.
Yeah, I'm telling you guys, it's the best to be able to learn about yourself and the people around you. So it just makes for better interactions all around. And you can like actually let go of some expectations that might be, pulling from the relationship, like hurting the relationship. So I'm so
Absolutely.
grateful for you. Thank you so much. You guys, everything is in show notes. If you want to go and grab that book or go look at the quiz, which I highly recommend. I absolutely loved it. Your products are beautiful too. Like it's so stunningly pleasing. I just love like
You.
the whole part of it. So, you guys, you know that I love to see what you took out of this podcast. So, if you want to go and tag AstroTwins on Instagram and tag me and let us know what your biggest takeaway was, we always love to see who's listening, who's watching, and we'll share your story as well. And until next time, everyone, earn your happy. Bye bye.